Hey everyone, Guyver Geek here. Before we listen to the interview with Steve Cassling, aka Masaki Murakami, I want to let you all know about a special sale we're running on the Guyver Geek Etsy store until May 1st. Everything on the store will be 20% off, and you have to check out some of the new items we've just listed. One being this Murakami t-shirt that I think you're all going to love. On top of that, we have a sweet Guyver Gigantic hoodie and shirt, as well as one of my favorite pieces, a homage to Guyver Dark Hero. All of these come on multiple products like stickers, hoodies, t-shirts, canvases, and mouse pads. Make sure to check out the store at theguyvergeek.etsy.com, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more Guyver goodness. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Welcome to the Guyver Geek YouTube channel. I'm your host, Donavon Thompson, aka the Guyver Geek, and today's another exciting episode of Guyver Legends. And of course, today we have the one, the only Steve Cassling. Steve?
Hello, how are you?
And for our Guyver listeners out there, Steve Cassling was the voice of Masaki Murakami in the LA Hero rendition of Guyver Bio Booster Armor, the OVA. And so it's very cool to have you on here, Steve. And I think it was just by happenstance. I was in a Facebook group and I see you comment on there and I was like, whoa. I was like, there's the voice of Murakami. I was like, I've got to get him on the channel and got to talk to him.
Yeah, I had no idea of the popularity of this particular anime. This is stuff we did 35 years ago, plus in some cases. And my son is really the one who turned me on to the fact that a lot of these older animes have become kind of popular again. And I happened to, Les Claypool is a good friend of mine who did all the engineering for all this. And he popped up on, I think it was the Guyver website. There's a Facebook page. Right, yeah. I just happened to comment on there. Oh, hey, how cool is this? I was the voice of Murakami in those. And then it just exploded. I got more feedback on that than anything I've ever posted on Facebook before. So it was very cool. Yeah. And that's how we got in touch.
Yeah, it's super cool. And just a little background for you. I started this channel roughly about a year and a half ago now, just initially just to kind of put everything Guyver onto one place. Growing up, a population 10,000 people in Batesville, Arkansas. No internet in the 90s, those kind of things. And we just kind of felt like the Guyver was something no one really knew about. And then obviously internet comes on, get out of high school, like, oh, there's actually more people who like this property. Of course, there's some live action movies. There's a comic book it's based off of in Japan. And, my initial mission was just to kind of put everything from one place for pre-existing fans as well as people who may stumble upon it, right? And create new fans. And then we kind of started snowballing and started finding out some of these actors that were available to talk to. And then, just kind of kept going. And eventually I got Tom Fon on the channel, who's the voice of Sho Fukumachi. And then Tom got me in touch with Victor Garcia, who is our last Guyver interview. And of course, he was very integral into the creation of the
he got me into it. Yeah, he got me.
Yeah, and so it's just been a great education for the fans in terms of the people behind some of the work that we really appreciate. And then, of course, people know by now I'm a filmmaker first. And so I like to kind of approach things from a filmmaker perspective and kind of hear more about you guys and how you guys got into that space and just kind of what you continue to do today. So on that front, just looking at your IMDb, what's interesting is that you're listed as additional crew in like Nightmare on Elm Street, Drunken Master 2, Armor of God, which I've seen all these films. So that's 1994. So tell me, what was your path to beginning on these sets? And did you always plan on being in the filmmaking world?
Absolutely. Well, yes and no. I knew I wanted to be an actor since I was a little kid. When you start off in elementary school, your teachers kind of put the kids who are a little wilder or willing to talk or willing, not afraid, they'll put them in shows. And I found that I really loved it. I grew up in outside of Philadelphia, so we were very close to New York City, and my parents were big theater buffs. So we would go to New York all the time and see Broadway shows. So that was kind of what I grew up on, very seeing cool. Broadway musicals and things like that. And I think what the show that really made me want to be an actor was we went to see Guys and Dolls, which I've now done twice in my life. And it was the all black cast of Guys and Dolls with Robert Guillaume, who played Benson. There was a show back in I don't remember if it was the 70s or the 80s, where he was the butler of the governor of. He was originally on Soap. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. I know Soap.
Originally on that, but he played Nathan Detroit on stage in the all black cast, and the guy who played Nicely Johnson. I don't know if you know the show at all, Guys and Dolls. There's a
little bit.
There's a big song called "Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat," which is like at a revival meeting, and this guy sang the crap out of the song, and he got 7 encores.
Wow.
On Broadway. And I'd never seen anything like that before, where, if you know what an encore is, it's a pretty amazing thing for an actor. It means the applause is so much, the audience is going so crazy that they want a little bit more of what you just did. He got to do the ending of the song 7 times, and I thought, that's absolutely what I want to do. I think I was 10 or 11 years old, and went on and went to Boston University. That's where I was in the BFA program with them. After that, I got hired at the Alley Theater in Houston, Texas, which is a big regional theater, professional theater. That's where I got my equity card. Equity is the union for stage actors. Did a bunch of shows with them for about a season and a half. I think I got my equity card playing Rolf in Sound of Music.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
When I was about 19 years old. And then I moved back to Philly for a little while, planning on going to New York City, but this was the early 80s and not a lot was going on in New York at that time. And I needed to get out of my parents' house. This is when kids were still wanting to get out of their parents' houses.
Sure.
And I moved to LA with like $40 in my pocket. Me and a buddy, I had a big car, and we stuffed it full of our crap, and we drove across the country. And I moved to LA in 1983 and was there for 20 years before I moved to where we currently live, which is Big Bear, California, which is about 100 miles outside of LA. We're a ski resort town. So we moved here when our son was about 5 years old to kind of get him out of LA and romp around. I grew up, romping around in the woods and stuff like that, and I wanted him to have experience. And
is that north of LA?
It's east.
East, okay.
But I live at about 7,000 feet. So we're in the mountains. Nobody really knows there are mountains right outside of LA.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
LA and Palm Springs. And we have 2 ski resorts up here that are really great ski resorts. And we own a pizza place up here called No Name Pizza. If you're ever in Big Bear, come on by.
Oh, heck yeah. I love pizza.
My son just graduated a couple of years ago from Cal State Fullerton with a theater degree.
Very
Couldn't
cool.
keep him out of it. And so now we're kind of deciding if we want a new adventure.
That's very cool.
I started a theater company up here 15 years ago called the Big Bear Theater Project, and we've been doing shows, and I just have resigned from being the artistic director of that group to kind of open myself up to start auditioning back down in LA. Now that we're not raising Spencer up here anymore, we thought, maybe it's time to do something else. So I'm doing a lot of dubbing right now, a lot of voiceover work. I go down to LA at least once a week, working for Netflix and Amazon. All of their foreign content needs to be dubbed into English, and they hire SAG actors to do that. So that's been a great thing for me. In fact, I just this last I think it was Wednesday or Thursday last week, worked on my first anime in probably 25 years.
That's awesome.
That was pretty cool.
That's great that you're staying busy. And one thing I want to kind of talk about real quick is the differences between theater and film, or even dubbing. So it seems like you've been in the theater area, at least stronger than some of these other areas. Like you're artistic director of this group. Your son's doing it now. Is that something that you're more passionate about than voice acting or just acting in front of the camera?
Yes.
Yeah.
because of the immediate response you get from
Sure.
an audience.
Sure.
It's when you're in front of a live audience, it's almost a dance that you have with them, and
Yeah.
you feed on their energy, they feed on your energy, and it's like that guy who was able to do 7 encores. It's an amazing feeling to be able to take an audience from the beginning and bring them along with you on the journey that you have created in the arc of your character.
Yeah.
The theater is much more of an actor's medium than film
Sure.
is. Film is much more of a director's medium. They can take a crappy performance for the most part, turn it into a pretty good performance, or they
Yeah.
can destroy it. The way something is edited might destroy a performance or change a performance completely from what the actor was originally trying to do. So for me, I mean, I worked on, I haven't been on camera. Mostly for me, it was TV. When I was living in LA, I did Bold and the Beautiful and General Hospital and Young and the Restless, and I did Facts of Life and Murphy Brown, and what else did I do? Just shows from that era, and it's a lot of just sit around and wait.
Yeah.
And then, especially like for me, I was playing smaller characters, so they don't spend a lot of time with you.
Sure.
You go and you better say your line right the first time they
Yeah.
want you to say it.
In and out sort of thing.
Exactly.
That's something I hear from actors all the time, especially people who dabble both in theater and in film, is that, of course, with filmmaking, there's an X amount of takes and it's kind of solidified forever. And all people are just like, oh man, I wish I had another chance to do that again, or why'd they pick that take, whatever. And it sounds like to me that actors just love not only the discovery on stage, like of course you're practicing and beforehand, but sometimes there's just something electric about the response from the audience. They're like, oh, that's something you can feed into or change, night to night or show to show in one day. And it sounds like it's just another example of that being true.
Or something that your fellow actor does on stage. On film, a lot of times you're not acting with anybody. You're in,
Right.
If it's a close up, you're by yourself. Maybe if you're lucky, your acting partner's on the other side of the camera,
Right.
feeding you lines, so you kind of, have a vibe for what's going on. But unless it's a 2-shot or a medium shot or something like that, you're by yourself, and it's a totally different process. I've done there's actually a series called High the Series, which I think is available. You can find, was done strictly for the internet, local filmmaker up here. And we did it over a period of about 3 or 4 years. The different seasons came about. And that was really fun for me because I was able to dial things back. The technique for acting on film is way different than acting on stage.
For sure.
It's all about this on film. If you think of something, it comes across on your face.
Right.
Whereas on stage, you have to show that. You have to show that in your body or in your face or whatever it is, in your voice. Whereas film, if you try to show it on your face, it looks really, really bad.
Especially on those close-ups. Yeah, especially on those close-ups. Right. Yeah.
And voice acting is very similar. Voice acting is very subtle, very much more like film acting, like all the dubbing I'm doing. You kind of have to match whatever the actor from Poland or France or Spain did. So you want to match his performance. So it's much more, you don't have to do a lot. Whereas anime, it's a little bit heightened, which is fun too.
Yeah, it's super fun, and of course, it's got its own special flavor amongst all the different cartoons or genres or whatever. I do want to kind of go back though. What were you doing on these feature films like Nightmare on Elm Street? It says additional crew, but what was your actual role in all of the production?
So I started working, as Vic talked to you about, Empire Pictures, Empire Entertainment, whatever they were called back in the day. I had one of my very closest friends, a guy who I actually got when I got my first job in LA. I was waiting tables. This guy worked with me. Then I got a show. I did a show. I came back and I needed a gig. And he said, "Well, I'm working at this place called Empire Entertainment. And, they could use some production people." So I was just doing little stuff. The first job I had was working with Steve Bloom, who I know other people have talked about.
Yeah.
He and I hired to empty out a storage facility of theirs that had props and crap in. And we were both like, I think Steve's a year or two older than me, and we were both probably 22, 23 years old. Mm-hmm. And we had a U-Haul truck, and it was just the two of us. And I think they gave us a week to empty out this storage unit. I think we did it in about 2 days and just spent the rest of the week driving around or, hanging out at each other, whatever, killing time, getting paid for it. And that's where I first started doing production work. I worked on a film called Metal Storm. Mm-hmm. I worked on a film called Trancers with Tim Thomerson and Helen Hunt. All just PA stuff.
Okay.
Because I figured, hey, this is a good way to learn about a set.
Yeah.
I learned who everybody is. I got a call. I'm trying to remember if I did. I can't remember if Reanimator came out first or Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it was Nightmare on Elm Street was the first one. So I got hired on that as a PA. And I remember, I think the first day, because they had already shot for about a week when I came on board. Mm-hmm. I think my first day on set was the scene where Freddy holds out his arms and they extend.
Yeah.
And they're like scraping the fences on either side of the road. And I remember going, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. It all looked so goofy.
Sure.
It was all practical. There were no CGI. There was none of that. And of course, Johnny Depp was on set. This was his first film. He had just moved from Kentucky. And as an actor PA, I tended to hang out with the actors and I would make myself the actor wrangler.
Cool. Yeah.
So I was always in the makeup room or hanging out with the actors where they hung out. So I spent a lot of time with all those guys. And Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger, he and I hit it off right away because I had just come from working at the Alley Theater in Houston. He had worked at the Alley the season before I got there. So he's a theater guy. And because I came in about a week late, and he was always first on the set, it was probably 2 weeks before I saw him out of makeup. I only saw him in makeup. And we would always have our conversations with him in full Freddy makeup. And at the end of the day, this is kind of a little personal, but he would always have me come in. There was a shower in the makeup room, and I would go in and scrub the blood off of his back after he took all the appliances off. And so that's how he and I got to know each other. And I am actually in that film. This is my son Spencer's favorite fun fact about his dad. I'm the first Freddy Krueger anyone ever saw. So the opening credit of the film where the title sequence comes on, you see Freddy from about the waist down walk into frame, lean down and pick up a bag that's got the glove in it.
Right.
That's me.
Wow, very cool.
So I'm the first Freddy Krueger.
You're the first. Wow, I learned something every day. It's very cool.
And then you'll see my hand a couple times. I wore the glove and did some things like that. But that little sequence was probably the last day we shot, and Wes Craven had brought in Sean Cunningham, who directed Friday the 13th.
Yep.
He brought him in to help him with all this little B-roll stuff that he needed. Sure. That was one of them. So I was directed by Sean Cunningham in the opening sequence of Nightmare on Elm Street. So that's kind of that's my fun on that.
Yeah, it's a very cool fact.
When it says additional crew, that's what I mostly did. Although Drunken Master, I don't know why it says additional crew, because I dubbed that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, so I mean, it sounds like, hey, what a cool movie or set of movies to kind of get your feet wet, to kind of see how things are working. And of course, like you said, on set, some things can look ridiculous, and you never know how the audience is going to react to it. And look at that now; it's one of the most popular or well-known horror franchises of all time. So you never know what gig or job is going to have a lasting impact on the audience or stick with you as a performer or someone involved in the industry for sure.
It was a great experience, looking back on it. It was a fun set to be on. We were over at the old Desilu Studios, which is where, I Love Lucy was shot. And a lot of it was a funky studio by that time, but I shot a couple things over there. I was in a music video we shot there. I don't even know if it's around anymore. They may have shut it down, but there's some great stories from that set. Charlie Fleischer, who eventually was the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
He's a doctor in that movie, and this was long before Roger Rabbit. And I remember I kind of knew who he was. As you said a minute ago, this is way before internet and YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. So unless you happen to see Charlie Fleischer somewhere, you didn't know he was a comedian. But he came on the set, and I remember for about the first 2 hours, he was really entertaining. And then it was so tiring after that, because he never stopped. He was never not going 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And the one other story I want to tell,
please.
The centipede that comes out of the mouth. Do you know that scene? Mm-hmm. There's the girl. Oh, what was her character's name? The blonde. I had a huge crush on her. I can't remember the name of her character. Tina was the name of her. Tina. And after she dies, they had made a mask of her face, and this huge centipede comes out of her mouth. And it was some South American venomous centipede that the bug wrangler guy brought in, but it got loose on the set.
Oh no.
So they had to clear the set until they found the centipede, because I don't know if it could have killed you, but it was like, getting bit by a tarantula or something. So
yeah,
it was
no good.
Rifled with. So that was kind of, kind of fun.
I'm not the biggest fan of bugs, but huge fan of Spider-Man, just not so much bugs in general. But yeah, no. So I kind of want to talk to you. So you met Steve Bloom doing this really that's one thing about PA work too. People don't know, or production assistant, is that you're essentially a gopher. You're just doing you're washing Freddy Krueger's back. You're being a stand-in 1 second because they need someone else. You're doing getting orders or picking things up or whatever it is. It's like the catch-all for the filmmaking industry, but how did you go from doing some of this stuff on set to actually starting to do voice dubbing and things like that?
I had the guy who was the casting director for all of the films that were happening at Empire. The last thing I did, I think I did 12 films working production on like 12 different films, everything from a driver to on-set PA stuff.
Wow.
Assistant to the second AD, all of that kind of stuff. And the last one I did was, I remember we were shooting, they did weird stuff over at Empire. Like they took a South American film that was already a film, they cut it up, they filmed additional stuff with like Linda Blair from The Exorcist, and the guy who played this is dating me, but the guy who played General Burkhalter in Hogan's Heroes.
I don't know that one.
In that one, he was a big German guy. They shot scenes with them, and then somehow re-edited it with the Brazilian film that they had and made a new movie out of it. So I was working downtown somewhere, and Penn Jillette, who is the magician from Penn and Teller, he's the ball guy.
Yeah.
He was doing just a short scene playing a security guard, and he got shot in the center of the forehead. And that night, the casting director was there, and he was like, he took me aside. He said, "Hey, Steve, do you like doing production work?" And I said, "Well, it's paying the bills right now." He goes, "Because they really like you in production, they will never hire you as an actor. Just FYI.
Yeah.
They put you only as production. So right then I went, so I need to reshift my
Yeah.
focus.
That's something I see, through all my, went to school in Arkansas, University of Central Arkansas, got my filmmaking degree there, and all my friends, colleagues, whatever, peers, they would go to LA or go to Atlanta, and they would be working as a PA or assistant editor or something like that. And they're wanting to direct or wanting to cinematography or write. And it's like, I would tell them, guys, like, if you want to do that, you have to just do it, or, be in that field, because if you're really good at being a PA, like you're saying, they're going to be like, oh, he's a great PA. I don't want to lose him as a PA. And they'll never bump you. I mean, why would they? Why would they have the incentive to do that?
Yeah, no, it made perfect sense to me. And it was right around this time that Vic called and said, hey, I got this friend. I think this was back in the Robert Napton was the guy who I think was the beginning of all this. Before LA Hero, it was Nippon Books,
Okay.
I think.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that one. I don't
remember the timeline. I mean, this was so long ago.
Yeah, we're dealing with 1990, 89 area. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this was 80. This was definitely in the 80s, the late 80s. And Vic just called everybody he knew who was an actor and said, hey, we're doing this thing, and they're taking these, Japanese cartoons. And the only thing I knew from that was, I think some other people have talked about it, Speed Racer, Kimba the White Lion, Astro Boy.
Yeah.
That was my only knowledge of Japanese animation. He said they're, dubbing these things, and why don't you come over to this guy's house? We're going to watch videos on TV, and everybody's just going to kind of do some voices, and we'll see what happens. And so that was kind of the beginning of it all. I think they probably let all of us work because they were trying to, get some stuff done.
Sure.
And as you said in one of our contacts, you've already talked to Les Claypool?
Yeah. I haven't interviewed him yet, but we've had a lot of back and forth over the last year. Yeah.
So the first stuff we did was at his childhood home out in his garage. I can't remember if he had bought the home from his mom. I think she was there while we were doing it, but it was out in Pacoima in his garage. And I mean, there were a lot of garage studios in those days. I was also, Steve Bloom and I were in a band together.
Wow.
He played guitar, I played saxophone. If you wanted to record something, you would go to somebody's garage to record it. But those were fun days, I mean, it was, I can't even remember. I remember Les had this specific piece of Tupperware that we would use if we wanted to yell really loud, we would yell into the Tupperware. And it was just, we were all kind of making it up as we went along. And that's how all that started. And then I just kept getting, things after that. I can't remember it. It seems like when you were talking to Vic that a lot of it started with Guyver, but my memory is that was probably the fourth or fifth thing that I did.
Oh, okay.
That was the first thing where I really kind of thought about a character and wanting to change my voice and all of that kind of stuff. Prior to that, you do a main character voice. You want to stick to as close to your own voice as possible, because a lot of times you come in there and then 2 weeks later you got to come back and do some pickup lines, stuff like that. So it's a lot easier to remember what you sound like if you're not veering too far away.
That makes a lot of sense.
But then you're also playing cops and army guys, and you're doing Walla and all that kind of stuff, because we were handling everything at that point.
What was I'm sure it's different today, but what was the process of actually recording? So I'm sure you guys are watching it. Are there beats or like a metronome to kind of sync things up, or what was the process? I talked a little bit about Victor about it and Tom, but for you, tell me what it was like to actually dub in Les's garage or wherever.
So it's way different now than it was. They've gotten way more sophisticated now that I'm doing dubbing again, mostly live action stuff, but the process is completely different than it was. Back in the old days, they would send us here. I've got some of my old
Oh yeah, Macross.
videotapes.
Very cool.
Ambassador Magma. This is probably my favorite. Giant Robo was my favorite that I worked on. Steve and
Very cool.
I played brothers in that one, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, very cool.
But back in the old day, they would send you a typewritten script. You'd go through and highlight your lines, and at every line, they had time code written in front of your line. So they'd also send you a videotape with the original Japanese in it. And I remember sitting down in front of my TV, watching the videotape. Okay, time code's coming up, it's coming up. And then, practicing at home, you'd kind of figure out what the mouth was doing. Back in those days, it really helped if you could memorize your lines, because then you could watch the screen. You could solely watch the screen. In the studio, what would happen is in your headphones, you'd hear 3 beeps, and then you start talking on what would be the 4th beat. So you'd hear beep, 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 start talking. And that's all they would give you. And so then you're trying to, that's why I said it helped to memorize the lines, because then you're trying to match the lip flaps. And a lot of the early translations were really poor.
Right. Yeah.
The people who did because there was, it's a process. There's the translation from Japanese to English, and then somebody goes through and massages the dialogue to try to fit the lip flaps. And sometimes it goes astray, and sometimes it, doesn't. Nowadays, they've gotten so sophisticated. They've got a track with your lines running across the bottom of the screen that you're watching. It's still the same that you're in a booth or in a, the rooms have gotten bigger. Back in the old days, it was literally like the size of a phone booth inside the. Now you've got your own room, and you can see the director through the window over here, and you've got this nice big, 80-inch screen in front of you, and your line of dialogue is running across the bottom, and there's a green line, and the dialogue will come to it, and as soon as it hits that green line, you start talking.
Yeah.
And they've gotten so good with the way they write the dialogue now that I barely even have to look up at the character anymore. I just read the line and it all fits pretty well. Also, the engineers have gotten so good that, man, they can move stuff around real easily. And if you know enough to leave a little gap for them, they can slide that over here. So it's gotten way, way better. Back in the old days, man, and we were just shooting from the hip and hoping we hit. It was fun.
For talking about back then and even today, what's the room for direction, or I guess what's the room for you getting to kind of do your own little thing in that little time span? Because typically, of course, the pacing is important. The director will kind of adjust that, like on a live action film. But when you only have like 3 or 4 seconds to do dialogue, where's the room in there to bring whatever Steve Cassling is in there? Where's the room in there? How do you do that?
It's different. There's much more room for that in anime than there is in the live action stuff. In the live action stuff, I feel like my job is to serve the performance that the actor on screen gave. So I'll listen to his, you can get the feel, even if you don't understand the language, you can get the feel of what the actor is doing, so that I'm not screaming across the room. And that's mostly the direction in dubbing is very subtle. Like you said, it's like 3 seconds on a line here, or it might be as much as 10 seconds. And for most of the time, I don't even get to hear the person that I'm in the scene with. Sure. So I really have to rely on the director and the performance of the person on screen. The anime stuff, that was a lot freer, especially back in the old days, because sometimes the translation, the story that they would end up writing was close to what the original was, but maybe not exact. So we could play around a little bit. sometimes the line's like, you know what, that doesn't work. He's saying something with a K in it or something that ends with a closed mouth. So we would just change it on the fly. And, that's a lot of back and forth between sometimes I would have an idea, sometimes the director would have an idea. But they had an idea of the overall vibe they wanted. Like with Murakami, I kind of came up with his whole delivery. I was basically just doing a Clint Eastwood impression.
Yeah.
Because at that time I thought, okay, and I think they probably described him to me as this guy's super cool, and he's always wearing sunglasses, and so I thought, well, who's the coolest actor right now? And this was in the 80s, so I thought, well, Clint Eastwood's a pretty cool actor. So everything I'm doing is kind of like that. Yeah. That's the Tommy voice, and that's kind of what I went with. So I was just channeling Clint Eastwood through my whole thing with Murakami.
Yeah, he's obviously a fan favorite just for the reasons you said. He's always wearing sunglasses. He's got that 80s Miami Vice kind of look to it at all times. And there's being a Guyver fan is kind of torturous sometimes because we get little inklings of material, or the manga is not even continuing in some respects, and people just don't really seem like they gravitate towards the franchise for whatever reason, and rights issues, all these kind of things. But whenever people are doing fan art, or when I don't know if you know this, but Max Factory is like a company in Japan by Max Watanabe, and they've made figures in the mid to late 90s of Murakami and his transformed version, and those are always really hot items in the community, and people always love that character. And again, it's very cool just even talking to you and talking to people that really inspired me creatively, and also just mean a lot to the community. So again, thank you. I'm going to say thank you a couple times through this probably. And one cool thing just for our fans, you may not even know this too. I didn't know this till recently, but the gun that Murakami is holding, it says like, I think it says like Max Factory Booster or something like that on the gun. And that was kind of an homage to Max Watanabe, who was making these Guyver figures at the same time. So that's a cool little, I learned that recently myself, a very cool little antidote there. I want to kind of talk to you also about, one thing that's interesting, I'm not sure if you heard this, is this wasn't on our questionnaire thing, it just kind of come to me as you were talking. The Brutalist with Adrian Brody, he's up for Best Actor at the Academy Awards. I haven't seen the film yet. It's on my to-do list. I can't wait to watch it. And one thing that it's been kind of going on for a couple of years now, it's only become kind of more in the conversation because he's up for Academy Award, is that, he's doing an accent that's not his native accent. I think that they're using AI to kind of get him to where they ultimately want him to be, to act for the accent. And so we had a couple strikes in the last year or 2, 3 years, with actors and even directors and writers, those kind of things, dealing with AI. Are there conversations, coming down the pipeline to voice actors of like how this is changing things, or how that will affect voice dubbing in the future? Just kind of talk to me a little bit about AI and your perspective on it.
Absolutely. The general consensus is that we dubbers, I think dubber we'll probably lose our place before ADR and Walla, although that too is endangered. One of my buddies who does tons of ADR for TV shows has been doing that for 20 years now, makes a great living at it, is on some huge TV shows and movies. His feeling is that we've all got maybe 3 years left. Because they put out, I don't know if you ever saw this, just as an experiment, they took Squid Game, which was, one of the most popular Netflix series that was dubbed. I never worked on Squid Game. I did Money Heist, was the first one I did for Netflix. So that was pretty cool to come in on a good one. But they took Squid Game. They focused on the main character, the main guy character. They took his voice and synthesized it changed it into English, and then with AI manipulated his mouth so that it looks like he is speaking English.
Yeah.
And why would you not do that if you've got that capability?
Sure.
Because it's still disconcerting. I mean, I do a lot of dubbing, and I'm proud of a lot of the shows that I've done, but even I have a hard time sitting down and watching a dubbed live action. Because you can tell, right away, you can tell, wait a minute, they're not speaking this language.
There's something about, and this is something we not to cut you off, but in film school is that you could have bad like visuals, even though it's a visual medium, but you can't have bad audio. And dubbing is not bad audio, but there is a disconnect there between people who don't, especially the casual film goer who's not trained to like watch foreign language films and subtitles. There's a disconnect there, and they just for some I'm not this way, but they just automatically disconnect from it for whatever reason,
Yeah. But then again, at least half the stuff when you go on Netflix and search through the movies, that stuff is dubbed.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Been great for me. I'm real happy about it.
Yeah.
It's been a nice way to stay busy in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've seen even on my part of work, and so I do a lot of editing for like marketing, stuff like that. And we, a few years ago, we were hiring voice actors off whatever subscription service or whatever it was. And they were actually recording the lines for us, and you can kind of you could direct them a little bit, give them notes. And now it feels like we've switched over to these AI programs where we're just feeding scripts and they're just pumping them out. And, of course, you can tell they're not 100% there, and you have to kind of correct some things, but I mean, it's pretty close. And it just seemed, for me, I'm just like, I'm very curious to see, I'm sure we all are, but where all this is going. And, my consensus I got from the strikes was that, we're not going to do AI just or we're not, they want to do it. Let's just be clear about that. They want to save money. They want to have the option. And it feels like to me, what they really want is they want Steve Castlings to say the ABCs, and then they can just reproduce his voice in anything they want. Is there something, have you run into those kind of conversations of like, hey, we could just take your voice and use it in perpetuity? Have you heard those kind of conversations? No.
Not yet. I've read anecdotal things about that, but I've not run into that personally yet. And I mean, this year has already started off busier than last year was. Things dropped off for some reason. And dubbing was never affected by the strike, which was a great thing. My good buddy who does ADR on regular TV shows, he was on strike, but the dubbing contracts were not affected by the SAG strike.
Interesting.
Carve out. So we stayed working, which was great. Even through the pandemic, we all set up studios in closets and empty bedrooms and stuff like that. And it was like, I'm with you on the computer right now. I'd have my Mac set up here, and they've got in the middle, there's the screen of what I'm dubbing. And then over in the right corner, there's the director who I could see in a little box. And then down in the other corner is the engineer, who on dubbing is equally as important as the director. I mean, the director is absolutely needed, because a lot of times it's so out of context. You're saying a line and you're not hearing what you're responding to or what's coming after. So the director is there to tell you all of that. Okay, well, here's what just happened. You just saw this murder take place, and now you're here at home and you're a little freaked out. And, it'll be that kind of stuff that the director helps you out with, just to kind of give you the mood. Occasionally, they'll give you a line reading. Most of the directors are actors, so they know that actors don't really want line readings.
Sure.
But occasionally they'll say, I really need you to hit this word because look what his face does when he says better, or, whatever it is. So there, it's great about that kind of stuff. Les actually tells a funny story about me in one of his panels that he does back in the old garage days. He said, and I don't even remember this incident, but it's a funny story and I can see myself doing this. He said, the director was going on and on about, what your motivation for this coming up was. And at one point you just stopped him and said, I don't think I need all that for just a death scream. So that's what's the story. So sometimes, sometimes you just, it's a death scream. I'm dying. I'm going to scream.
Right. It seems like, just talking to actors over the years and in doing these interviews the last year and a half, that voice actors are, out of all the groups, they're probably the most okay with line readings because of that time, because of trying to sync up with someone's dialogue. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's technical things they need to do. We need to hit this word at the end because of what the face is doing, or what his mouth is doing. The energy changes there. And if I'm reading the line and I'm not looking directly at the guy's face, I may miss some subtle thing that's going on, so
one thing I kind of
at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, one thing I kind of wanted to talk about, since you brought up the theater stuff, which I didn't know about, you being the artistic director over a theater group. So let's kind of talk about directing. So, I mean, obviously you've had to direct, right? I'm sure you've directed actors and you've done probably everything, right? And so right, yeah, you've been, the control room, everything, lighting, everything probably. So a thing I've asked actors in the past is, because it's something I'm always just I'm trying to find that balancing act when I'm on set as a director, is I think it was John McTiernan and some DVD, I think it was Die Hard commentary, I saw this a long time ago and it always stuck with me, was that he was more concerned about how the actor was saying it versus what they were saying. And so obviously dialogue is important because of some story beats, but the idea there being that he wants to feel the emotion, he wants to see it versus just hitting the exact dialogue. Well, how do you feel about kind of pulling out performances? Again, it's different with theater, but is dialogue so important to you versus the expression and getting that across to the person in the back row?
In a play on stage, I would say I almost never change any dialogue whatsoever, because a playwright, to me, that's like almost sacred ground.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, there's when you open up a play, the first page gives you the copyright info. Do not change any dialogue. Do not, without express written permission of the author, blah, 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 blah. So gotcha. They've got that written in there. So, but they've usually, and I don't want to take away from screenwriters by any means, because screenwriters will spend years writing a script, but then a lot of times it'll go to 5 other screenwriters who change it and do things to it and change things around to make it work the way they want it to work. Directors. Exactly. That's why you'll see 9 people on a screenwriter. Whereas one dude sat down and came up with that idea probably 8 years ago. I think there's a little more room to play with dialogue, or I have found that the stuff that I've done on film, if something's not really, if the director's not digging it, we'll change the dialogue. In a play, never.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. It's making that that's your job as an actor, is to make that dialogue work. Okay. And that's why, as an artistic director, I would try to only pick great plays, because there's nothing better or more helpful to an actor than great writing.
Sure. Great monologues, great moments. Yeah.
That's the best, You can move to tears by great writing just because of how well it's written and how each of those beats happen, can take you to an emotional place without trying to get to an emotional place. That's my favorite thing as an actor, is letting the writing move me. I'm known for being able to cry on stage at the drop of a hat, but a lot of that is because if the stuff is great, it's going to help you do that every single time. And when you're doing 8 shows a week, you got to be able to do it every single time, you know.
That's awesome. One thing I've asked people in the past is talking about, listening to your partner, your acting partner. But now that I've got you on here, again, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I get to kind of just go off book here. Off book is what's some of the techniques or warm up exercises that you do with your peers, your students, or your cast members to get them to listen to their colleague? Like what's something you do to get them to actually focus and pay attention and listen?
I'm not, that's an interesting question. I don't know that there's anything as an actor that you can do to make another actor listen to you if that's not what they do. I've been on stage with people who, you look in their eyes and it's deer in the headlights. They're not with you at all. And that's the hardest thing in the world. I mean, you can literally physically, I've done this before, grab someone by the shoulders and force them to look you in the eyes.
Right.
Because that's the whole key for stage acting, more than film, more than dubbing, more than any of that other stuff. Because most of that other stuff, it's singular work. It's more internal work. On stage, it's all about who you're working with. If you're with somebody who's not connected to you, there's not a whole lot you can do to make them connect to you. I'm not a fan of physically accosting someone on stage. I've been with actors like that who like to do, like I was in a play one time where I was playing this really, really nasty, like coke addict owner of a bar who was a jerk to all his employees. And I had this one actor one time, we were in this confrontational scene and he hauled off and punched me in the chest really, really hard. And he'd never done that before. This was during a performance and it changed my performance immediately.
I bet.
But I was pissed about it. I was like, when we got off stage, I was like, don't ever do that to me. If you want to change something, talk to me about it so I'm ready for it. But I'm not that kind of an actor that I want something aggressive like that to happen in the middle of a show that might throw me off. I mean, I stayed with it, but that could have made me forget all my lines. It could have changed things completely for me.
Yeah, it sounds like an extension to me of method acting in terms of, and maybe their mindset is, I'm going to do this and not tell them, and that'll make the performance stronger in some way because it'll be real. But I'm kind of in the camp where, if that works for you, that's great. And if everyone's cool with that, that's great. But you're actors. Like you should have the ability to act and not have to do crazy things to get someone to a particular place.
It's the Daniel Day-Lewis thing of having to be carried on and off the set when he was doing my flip. It's like,
he's brilliant, he's
one of the greatest actors ever, and I love all of his performances.
Yeah.
But as someone who's been an actor now for more than 40 years, I call bullshit on a lot of that, where people like, Benedict Cumberbatch in that Western that was a couple of years ago, The Dog.
I saw it.
Great movie. Love the movie.
It's a great movie.
Who's it? Jesse Plemons plays his brother. Phenomenal in that. And he's fantastic in it. But I heard the stories like, when, new actors came on the set, they had to be introduced to him as his character. And it's, you'll meet Benedict after the shoot is over. And it's like, you got
the biggest example of that is obviously Jim Carrey and Andy Kaufman. And it was so egregious, they made a documentary about it, so it's pretty wild stuff. But
on my list, by the way, I've not seen that one, but that's on my list.
It's really good. Jim Carrey, again, very talented, and we'll talk about that movie another time. So tell me about, what's some of the challenging things that you've seen or you've been through as an actor on stage, and then how did you overcome that challenge? Like, what's something that you're like, oh man, besides getting punched, what's something that you're just like, damn, and then you had to overcome that?
I was doing a couple of years ago. I played. Do you know the movie Wait Until Dark with Audrey Hepburn? She
I do
played.
not.
Oh, you're a movie lover. You need to
Yeah,
watch the movie.
I'll put it on the list.
Called Wait Until Dark. Audrey Hepburn plays a blind woman living alone in an apartment in New York City, and somehow she gets some diamonds. I think some bad guys, in order to hide, they hide diamonds in a doll, and it gets she they give it to her because they know they can get it back from this blind woman. But
Sure.
and I'm trying to remember who the bad guy is in it. It's a great movie. Anyway, they did a play version of it. I think actually the movie was heroin. She had heroin, but
Okay.
now heroin's like, $5 for heroin. It's not a thing anymore. So they changed it to diamonds for the play. And so I played the bad guy. I played Rote, the bad guy in the show. And the big denouement, the big ending of the movie is she's in the apartment with him, knows he's there. She knocks out all the lights in the apartment. So now he's on her level.
Sure.
And she ends up killing him, basically. But it's one of those false. She thinks she has him killed, but then he gets up, and it's like a horror movie,
Yeah.
and jumps out at her. And so there's this whole scene. I'm dragging myself across the stage with a knife, and she's hiding behind the refrigerator and doesn't realize that the light in the refrigerator is still on. So that's creating light. So I come to the refrigerator, and she stabs me, and I fall over. And this was very choreographed, but a wooden kitchen chair had gotten knocked over, and I fall backwards and spin around, and I landed face first on this chair and thought I broke my nose. Immediate blood is gushing all over me, and I'm laying on the floor watching. I'm supposed to be dead, watching this pool of blood expand and expand and expand. Lights go out, and then we got to get to curtain call. So I stand up and get to my spot in curtain call. Lights come up, and there's applause. And as it goes down, I hear somebody in about the fourth row go, "I think that's real."
Wow.
So there's stuff like that happens that you just got to kind of go with,
Yeah.
You leading, and you finish the show. You get there for curtain call,
That's incredible. You finished it. Yeah. I mean, in the moment, at least the aesthetic matches what's happening. I guess that's a good thing. But man, that's you're a trooper for sure. Do you have a favorite Broadway or play, I should say?
I just did recently Misery.
Oh yeah. Oh, great one.
And played Paul Sheldon. I played the part that James Caan played in the movie. And it was incredible. First of all, just the fact that there's only 3 people in the play.
Yeah.
Annie Wilkes, Paul Sheldon, and then Buster, the sheriff, who comes in for short scenes. But I mean, we did the leg break on stage. My son, when he was in college, we always did crazy makeup stuff for Halloween. I would do with him, where he was like carrying his own body and had holding his own head. And so we always did stuff like that because I was into that as a kid. And he got really into that and worked on a film as an actor a few years ago. And the guy who was doing special effects makeup on it was a guy who was one of the I think it was the season 4, one of the final 3 in the movie or in the TV show Face Off, which was a makeup.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a great show.
It's very cool. Yeah,
very memorable. Had a mohawk, and Spencer and Eric befriended each other. So he goes down to Eric's shop all the time. In fact, he's working on a movie right now that's got Bruce Dern and Chevy Chase in it, and it's all animatronic cats and killer cats. So it should be fun. I didn't even know Bruce Dern was still around.
I didn't either.
Still around.
Yeah, I know Chevy Chase. You don't see him in that many things really anymore either. So that's pretty interesting to hear. What about him though? I mean, like you said he's going to school for theater. Does he want to go into the film area, or does he want to kind of follow you in some dubbing, or just kind of? I mean, it's super cool, by the way, that you guys have. It feels like you guys have bonded over your creativity, and it's kind of seeped over into his life too.
Oh yeah, and we've been on stage together probably 10 different times, whether it's me directing him or he's in the show with me now that he's an adult. We did the play that goes wrong a couple of years ago together, playing brothers in the show, which was actually kind of fun.
Yeah,
But he came up with all the special effects stuff that we did for Misery, the leg break, Buster getting shot by a shotgun and blood pouring out of his chest. I mean, we wanted it to look as filmic as possible. That was my kind of vibe. I wanted a horror movie on stage.
yeah,
I didn't want we had seen a version of Misery uh probably 6 months prior, and they did it very theatrically where, she swung the sledgehammer to break his ankle and never came in contact with his ankle, which was very apparent, and the actor just moved his foot a little bit.
yeah,
Well, I was like, no, I want to see that thing snap and I want to hear it. And so we were able to do all that. And it was pretty impressive. There were lots of gasps during that
yeah.
scene. So he's really leaning a lot more towards the special effects stuff, which I'm trying to encourage because from what I know from the entertainment business, that's maybe a better avenue than acting.
Well, I just interviewed Steve Lang last week, and he's been doing visual effects for 30 something years now. He was worked on Predator, and of course he co-directed Guyver 1, the first film, and he directed Guyver 2. And he's all up in that on special effects like makeup and costume and those kind of things, and also Evil Ted Smith. He's really great resource too. If you get in contact with him, interviewed him a couple months ago, but he also does a lot of great special effects and stuff, and he's also still working in the industry some too today. It's a really cool place to be, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a fun part of the job too. You get to make some really gross or just cool things. And I think the big thing to me, I said this, I think talking to Steve last week, was that the reason I love filmmaking so much, and I think this also applies to acting on stage or dubbing or whatever, is that to me the most attractive thing about all this is it's problem solving. Like you're getting information and then you're trying to problem solve, and with acting, it's how do you respond to somebody, how do you fix that, the tempo or pacing. Filmmaking, directing, it's how do I get this shot, my days are getting shorter or whatever. And it's just trying to figure out and make art with constriction. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Yeah.
No, it's a cool, whatever medium is, whether it's film or TV or dubbing or on stage, it's all about kind of being in the moment and listening.
Yeah.
Whatever the genre is, it's obviously a different technique on film than on stage, but it still all boils down to listening.
Yeah. What I mean, you mentioned a little bit in the beginning of the pod, and I guess this is a podcast interview, and we're almost here for time. So I want to kind of talk about what's next for Steve Cassling. Like you said, you have a pizza shop for one, which I definitely want to check that out. And then two, you said you're going to kind of branch out more and do some more dubbing and acting. So what's your primary goal?
Well, I really want to get out. I mean, Big Bear is a great place, but we're a very small community. There's 16,000 full-time residents up here. On a weekend, we balloon up to over 200,000 people because of the ski slopes and all of that. It's a tourist town. But I feel like I've done kind of everything that I can do here in Big Bear, and this is kind of telling secrets. I don't know if I've ever even talked about this before, but I felt a little cheated that I didn't go to New York, that I didn't get to go to New York. I went and there wasn't a lot going on, and because of the dynamic with my dad and being at home and all of that, it's like I just wanted to get the hell out of there, and that's what brought me to Los Angeles. That was not my first choice. I always thought of myself as a theater guy, and I came to LA and spent 20 years pursuing on camera work and did some stuff, did some TV shows, did some commercials,
Very cool.
got into the dubbing and all of that. I also worked as a music contractor, which was really cool. I was being a musician, I kind of know music and stuff like that. And a friend of mine was a music contractor. And if you don't know what that is for other people, I know you know what it is, but we are the people who hire musicians to play on films and TV shows. Right. And one of our composers, we were a two-man team. One of our composers was Danny Elfman. So I got to work on Men in Black, couple of Men in Black movies. I got to work on Red Dragon. I got to work on Planet of the Apes. So it was really cool, and these were all big orchestras, 120-piece orchestras that we were putting together. And that's kind of my big regret is I left Los Angeles right when that was all really happening for me. But my partner was kind of toxic in a way. And being the only other person there, I was on the not receiving end of it, but I was around all of that toxicity, and I'm not a person who likes to be around that. So that's kind of what made us, let's just move to Big Bear. I thought I could keep my commercial career and stuff like that going up in Big Bear. Was able to keep the dubbing going, but not the commercials and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of what took us out. So now that I've been here 20 years and I've done what I felt I wanted to do up here, it's like, well, I want to I know I can cast myself in a show, in the lead in a show, and I'll do a great job.
Sure.
But I think I'm good enough to compete with, people in LA and people in other large cities. So I'm just starting to audition again for union theater work down the hill. That's what we call off the mountain, is down the hill. We're also thinking about possibly moving to Denver, which is a great theater town. They've got a lot of union theaters, and I've got some family there. And, the Rocky Mountains are beautiful, and Denver's a very cool city.
Yeah.
Also kind of pondering maybe moving back to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a great theater town. There's a ton going on there. So I think that's where I'm kind of headed next. There also may be some other voice work in my future that I'm not really at liberty to talk about right at the moment.
Sure.
That I'm find out more about in the next few weeks that would keep me in LA. And that would be fine too. If I'm able to stay on the West Coast, stay in LA, I'd love that. I love Los Angeles. It's a great town. There's going on all the time, great restaurants, great shopping, and easy to get to the beach or the mountains, which are my favorite places. So that's kind of what's going on for me.
I briefly lived in Koreatown for a summer. Then I would commute to Santa Monica for an internship, and I loved California, and I miss it dearly. And it's just the energy there is just unparalleled, compared to somewhere like Arkansas, where I'm originally from, or Oklahoma, where I live now. But no, all that's very cool, and I'm gonna obviously follow you and see what you do next, and I'm super excited. Is there any way I can watch? Did you ever record any of your previous performances, like plays or anything? Or
yes, as a matter of fact, the guy who I'm in the process of putting together a reel of my theater stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll get that to you.
Yeah, I would love to watch it. Yeah, and if there's any performances or anything, and if they're on YouTube or whatever, I love to.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the link to High, the series too, which is really, really cool. A guy who grew up here and ended up going to Chapman University for filmmaking.
Okay. Yeah.
And does a lot of stuff, but this was kind of his passion project. It's about a kid growing up in a small mountain town who is dealing weed, and his dad is the chief of police of said small mountain town. Yeah. And I play this was a fun character. I play a drug counselor that he gets, he gets busted and has to go to these counseling classes, and I'm the drug counselor. I'm the guy supplying him weed. So
That's great. That's a great little twist.
kind of a fun little twist
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, it's
And
super fun.
one of the main guys in it is a guy named Chris Pennock, who has passed away, but
Mhm.
he was one of the main characters in an old soap called Dark Shadows. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
Okay, this it's another one you got to look up. It
Okay.
was back in the late 60s, early 70s. It was a soap opera, but the main family were all vampires.
Well, I thought, okay, there's the Johnny Depp remake, Dark Shadows. I didn't know that was
This was
about. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Okay, I thought it was based off a movie. I didn't know it was based off a show. Okay.
off a soap opera.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I didn't know that. Interesting.
This guy, Chris Pennock, played the main character. I don't know. I don't remember if it was the Johnny Depp character or
Hmm.
what. He was fun to have around. He's an old method actor, so I had a lot of scenes with him, and it was always interesting. Never ever was the dialogue the same.
Oh, wow.
He
Yeah,
just went with whatever he was feeling at the time, and so it was you had to be on top of it
yeah.
to.
I'm sure the editor loved that decision. Well, hey,
Well, the director, writer, editor, he did everything.
oh, okay. Well, in that case, yeah, who cares? Yeah, you can do what you want to do.
He was
But
and he was in love with Chris Pennock's performances. So he would let Chris do whatever he wanted to do, and then
well,
he
that's
would
good.
figure.
That works.
So
Well, that's a good thing then. That's the opposite of what I was thinking. Well, hey, Steve, I just want to say again, thank you so much on the behalf of the Guyver community. We didn't
I
talk
got
a
to tell
whole.
you,
Oh,
got
heck
my
yeah.
Guyver shirt on.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's my Guyver 3 is my personal favorite character, and so that's super cool. I again just want to speak for the half of the Guyver community. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and let us kind of get to know you as a actor performer, and then kind of get a little sneak peek into your life. We didn't talk a whole lot about Guyver, but again. That I tell everyone like, hey, I'm a filmmaker first, and to me, this is the kind of stuff I find more interesting, and how much can we talk about voicing Murakami or on a 6 episode stint on a show 35 years ago. And I think it's more fruitful and it's just more fun to kind of, get more about who you are and what you bring to the table. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time of your day to do this with me. And I know all the fans are going to appreciate it as well.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, like I said, I had no idea that this stuff that we did so long ago, and we weren't getting paid much
Sure. Yeah.
to do this. So we were all doing it. I mean, like I said, I was 22, 23 years old, maybe 25, 6, 7, as it was all going on.
Yeah.
But it was super fun to do, and it was a way to I could say I was making money as an actor. And I originally found out about the Guyver stuff when a dude found me on Facebook from England and said, "Oh my God, I grew up, coming home every day from middle school, and I'd watch my Guyver stuff." And he sent me all these cells to sign, and I was like, wow, that's surprising. I didn't know anybody even knew about this. And then finding the Guyver community on Facebook and finding you and watching several of your interviews now, I realize, oh, this is kind of a thing.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely a thing, and I think the again, like I mentioned earlier, ultimate objective here is just to kind of get people to know people who've been involved in the franchise, and then maybe we can create some new fans along the way too. And last thing I will ask you though before we leave, have you done many signings? Like, have you signed any merch? I know you said that one style, but never.
never.
Wow, you
I
totally
didn't.
did
I
it.
My buddy Steve Bloom. Do you know who Richard Epcar is? Do you know
Yeah,
that name?
yeah. I know the name.
So he's also one of my closest friends. He and I were in a different band than Steve Bloom, but we're always doing bands. Richard's a great drummer. Steve's a great guitar player. And I was talking to Richard. I had lunch with him not too long ago, and he was talking about he just remodeled his kitchen from the signings that he goes to.
Yeah,
Steve Bloom has this gorgeous house in Hawaii that, I'm sure
yeah,
a lot of that came from the stuff that he does. He they do very well at these conventions. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I can get in on that.
Well, hey, if you need any help, Bruno Patrick, who is the original, the main bad guy in the second Guyver film. I reached out to him privately, and we end up, he come onto the interview too, and then I've done his banner for his Comic-Con appearances, and I've given him artwork and all these kind of things. And so he's met people all, in this last year doing it himself, and it's definitely a way to make some extra money on the side. And also you get to meet people who appreciate the work you've done, so it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Another one I found out, I did a thing called Love Hina, which I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a harem anime, all girls. And my son tells me that it's really, really popular. And I played this kind of snotty rich boy. So some of these old things apparently have their own little following,
Oh, for sure. I mean, I saw you were on Mega Man, you were on Mobile Gundam 08th S Team, which that's one of my best friends. I haven't even told him yet that you worked on it, but that's his favorite anime of all time. Yeah. And so I was like, oh man.
Robo, I think, is my favorite one that I ever did.
That's also very popular. So I mean, you've got and that's the thing too.
Big O, I was on Big O, which is another good one.
Big O is super cool. That's one of my favorites as a kid watching on Cartoon Network. And so, what's a cool thing about you too is that you have a lot of different characters from a lot of different animes. And so I can already see your banner. Like you just have all these eclectic characters. I'm telling you, it'd be really cool if that's something you got into. You don't have to, of course, but I would love to see it just because I think it'd be cool for people to meet you. But
I would love actually to get into it. I was talking to Les and Mary Claypool, Les's wife, who she did a lot of the translations, which was really cool. She wrote Giant Robo.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Yeah, under a different name, I think. I mean, we were all using different names. I was Steve Areno for a long.
I saw that. Yeah.
I was union, and this was all non-union work. And back in those days, we were all real scared of getting caught doing non-union stuff. Oh, they'll kick the union, they'll fine you, whatever. So I was Steve Areno.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was cool. Lots of fun, and something I'm pretty proud of. So I would love to. And Mary was telling me that I could even tie in the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Reanimator stuff with the anime stuff, because she said it's the same group of people that like all of this.
100%. I would absolutely say I was the first on-screen Freddy Krueger. That's how I introduce myself to people, like at restaurants and stuff. But one thing too, I don't know about that. Well, yeah, but one thing too though is that again, we're kind of going off book here, but is that you're doing even more new stuff, and you got some stuff coming down the pipeline, it sounds like. And so who knows what's already popular, what's going to catch on. I feel like you're in a good place, and I'm excited to see what you do next, but very excited.
Well, thanks a lot. We will talk further, and I really appreciate you reaching out, and this was a lot of fun. And hello, everyone out there, all you Murakami people. Thanks for bringing me on.
Well, thank you again for being on here, and for all our listeners out here, thank you so much for watching or listening. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/@theguyvergeek. It's the best place. It's really the only place to find everything Guyver. And of course, I have all these great interviews over the last year and a half. People from the anime, the live action films. And if you're a Guyver fan, I can't see why you wouldn't want to watch these. So Steve, thank you again so much. And everyone, thank you so much for watching.
Take care.
For more content like this, head over to youtube.com/@theguyvergeek for 4K remasters, retrospectives, behind the scenes, and more as we catalog the Guyver universe. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.